In the chilling embrace of the Arctic Circle, near the secluded fjords of Tromsø in northern Norway, a squadron of 30 British Lancaster bombers sliced through the sky. The pilots, among the most skilled and courageous of Britain's airmen, were on a mission that could tip the balance of the war. Their target was none other than the German battleship Tirpitz, a massive fortress of steel and firepower that represented the pride and terror of the Nazi regime. Known across Europe as a symbol of maritime might, the Tierpitz was celebrated by Hitler himself as the pride of the German Navy. To the Allies, however, this was no mere vessel. Winston Churchill referred to it as the Beast, a supreme menace lurking in the icy waters, a direct threat to the lifeline of the Allied war effort. With the vital task of safeguarding the Baltic Sea and blocking crucial supply routes to the Soviets, the Tirpitz stood as a monolithic barrier designed to keep the Allies divided and weakened. Its very presence compelled Churchill to dispatch the best of his nation's aviators to the edge of the world in a desperate gambit to destroy it. Yet this mission was fraught with danger. The Tirpitz had already survived over 30 deliberate Allied attacks, earning itself the fearsome reputation of the Unsinkable battleship. On the morning of November 12, 1944, as the first light painted the skies over Tromsø, the British Lancaster bombers, armed with a new devastating payload, appeared like shadows against the dawn. The distant drone of engines quickly transformed into a thunderous roar, alerting the German crews on board the Tirpitz and along the coast. As sirens wailed and the anti-aircraft batteries sprung to life, the stage was set for a confrontation like no other. A clash of titans where the outcome would be decided by the raw power of an unprecedented new weapon. These were not ordinary bombs. Each Lancaster carried the 12,000-pound Tallboys, earthquake bombs designed with one singular purpose: to obliterate the seemingly invincible. If they couldn't sink the Tirpitz, nothing would. When Adolf Hitler rose to power in the early 1930s, it marked a turning point in Germany's military ambitions. His vision went beyond the mere rearmament of Germany. It was about restoring all branches of the military to their former glory. This ambition came to life on April 1, 1939, when a significant milestone was reached. At a grand ceremony held in Jade Bay, Wilhelmshaven, the stage was set for an extraordinary event. In attendance was Kriegsmarine Chief Erich Raeder, surrounded by Germany's top military officials. Amid the pomp and ceremony, Adolf Hitler proudly unveiled the German Navy's latest achievement, the battleship Tierpitz. The Tirpitz was not just another battleship, it was the sister ship to the mighty Bismarck, which had already set sail just months earlier. Slightly larger than its predecessor, the Tirpitz became the largest and most formidable battleship in Europe, named in honor of Grand Admiral Alfred von Tierpitz. A key figure in Germany's naval history, this massive vessel symbolized a resurgence of Germany's naval might, reminiscent of its golden age. The Tirpitz and Bismarck represented the pinnacle of the Bismarck-class battleships, designed as Germany's bold statement against the naval forces of other European nations. These ships were Germany's answer to the French Richelieu-class battleships of 1935, which were themselves a response to Italy's Littorio-class vessels. This fierce naval arms race highlighted the growing tensions in Europe as nations vied for dominance over the seas. In this context, the Tirpitz stood as a formidable adversary to France and Britain. The rapid expansion of Europe's naval fleets led to concerns about another devastating war. In response, the 1922 Washington Naval Treaty was introduced to cap the tonnage of naval vessels, initially restricting ships like the Bismarck and Tirpitz to 35,000 tons. However, the treaty's limitations were often flexible, bending to the strategic interests of the world's major powers. This was particularly evident when Japan exited the treaty in 1937, prompting an increase in the tonnage limit to 45,000 tons. This shift spurred nations, including Germany, to enhance their naval arsenals further. Yet Hitler's ambitions for naval supremacy extended beyond merely building larger battleships. At the same 1939 gathering, he and Admiral Raeder revealed an audacious plan known as Plan Z. This blueprint envisioned a formidable Kriegsmarine comprising 10 battleships more powerful than the Bismarck and Tirpitz, 4 aircraft carriers, 15 pocket battleships, an impressive fleet of 250 U-boats, and over 100 destroyers and cruisers. Though intended for completion by 1948, the plan represented Hitler's aspiration to challenge and potentially dethrone the Royal Navy. However, Hitler's impatience proved to be his own undoing. Despite promising Admiral Raeder that Germany would wait until 1945 to launch a European war, Hitler ignited the conflict in 1939, drawing Britain and France into the fray. This premature action meant that Germany could not fulfill the ambitious promises of Plan Z, as strategic resources were redirected to the ongoing war effort. Nonetheless, the Bismarck and Tirpitz remained among the most formidable ships in the world, with the potential to significantly impact the war. The mere presence of the Tirpitz and Bismarck evoked fear and respect, as only a few British and French vessels had the capability to challenge them. Their existence posed a direct threat to Allied naval and merchant operations in the Atlantic, a critical lifeline for Britain. If deployed in the Atlantic, these two battleships could severely disrupt vital shipping lanes, endangering the entire Allied war effort. Avoiding confrontation with the Tirpitz and Bismarck required significant rerouting and allocation of resources. Beyond their strategic value, these battleships symbolized German naval superiority and served as a constant reminder of Germany's capacity to challenge the Allies at sea. Keeping them operational provided a significant morale boost to Nazi Germany, underscoring the ongoing threat they posed to Allied forces. The strategic importance of targeting the German battleships, especially the Tirpitz and Bismarck, sparked intense debate among the Allied forces. Some military leaders argued that focusing resources on these massive warships might detract from other critical fronts. They believed the more immediate threat came from merchant raiders and submarines that were disrupting vital shipping routes across the Atlantic. However, the potential danger posed by allowing the Tirpitz and Bismarck to roam unchecked was considered too great to overlook. The destruction these ships could unleash, and their symbolic value to the Nazi regime, galvanized the Allies to prioritize their neutralization. The threat posed by these German super battleships was vividly demonstrated by the Bismarck. During a fierce naval battle, the Bismarck sank Britain's pride, the HMS Hood, a flagship battlecruiser that symbolized the might of the Royal Navy. This devastating loss underscored the potential havoc that the Tirpitz could wreak if left unchallenged in the Atlantic. Following the HMS Hood tragedy, the Bismarck became the primary target for the British fleet. The hunt for the Bismarck was relentless. Over several days, the British forces pursued the battleship with dogged determination, leading to a series of intense naval engagements. The decisive blow came from aircraft launched from the carrier HMS Ark Royal, whose torpedoes jammed the Bismarck's rudder, stripping it of maneuverability. This critical moment allowed British warships, including HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, to close in for the final attack. On May 27, 1941, after a brutal bombardment, the Bismarck was scuttled by its crew, sinking to the ocean floor. This marked a crucial victory for the Allies, removing a significant threat from the Atlantic and proving that even Germany's mightiest battleships could be defeated. Yet the Tirpitz remained, and the Allies were acutely aware of the danger it posed. For Winston Churchill, dealing with the Tirpitz was a matter of personal commitment. Determined to see the ship destroyed, Churchill's resolve was famously encapsulated in a terse three-word memorandum directed at the First Sea Lord, Sir Dudley Pound, on December 14, 1942. Where is Tirpitz? This inquiry captured Churchill's obsession with neutralizing the formidable German battleship, viewing it as a significant menace to Allied operations. Churchill's concerns were justified. The Tirpitz was engineered to be a behemoth of the seas, instilling fear in any adversary it faced. Empty, the ship weighed in at 42,900 tons, swelling to an astonishing 52,600 tons when fully loaded for battle. Stretching 251 meters in length, almost as long as 3 soccer fields, end to end, and with a beam wider than a 12-story building laid on its side, the Tirpitz was a sight to behold. Her propulsion came from a powerful steam turbine generating 160,000 horsepower, enabling the battleship to surge forward at a top speed of 31 knots. This immense power, combined with the roar of her engines, made the Tierpitz a dreaded adversary on the high seas. What truly made the Tirpitz a formidable threat was her arsenal of weaponry. She was armed with 8 15-inch guns, capable of launching shells over 35 kilometers with devastating accuracy. Each of these colossal guns bore a name. Anton and Bruno stood at the bow, while Caesar and Dora commanded the stern. These artillery pieces were housed within armored turrets, with some sections featuring steel as thick as 360 millimeters, designed to withstand enemy fire and continue delivering destruction. In addition to her primary guns, the Tirpitz was equipped with an impressive array of secondary armaments. She carried 5.9-inch and 4.1-inch guns along her flanks, ready to defend against smaller ships and aircraft. Initially armed with 28 anti-aircraft guns, this number was later increased to 58 as the threat from Allied aircraft became more pronounced. To further enhance her defensive capabilities, the Tirpitz also carried the Arado AR-196 seaplane, a swift reconnaissance aircraft tasked with spotting enemy submarines and coordinating attacks. With final modifications, the Tirpitz even included torpedo launchers, adding a deadly underwater dimension to her offensive potential. A robust belt of 320mm steel encircled the Tirpitz, providing substantial protection against enemy shells. This was topped by two decks armored like fortress walls, making the Tirpitz one of the most well-protected battleships of her time. Despite her formidable design, the Tirpitz was not invulnerable, especially when faced with coordinated and determined assaults. The British were keenly aware of this and devised strategies to counter her strength. From the very start, the Tirpitz was hunted relentlessly. Even before she could fully demonstrate her power, the British sought to eliminate her threat. The loss of her sister ship, Bismarck, meant that the Tirpitz was strategically confined to the fjords of Norway, serving as a watchful guardian of Nazi-controlled waters. There she lay anchored, a floating fortress protected by the natural landscape and a crew of over 2,000 dedicated Kriegsmarine sailors. The British, however, held a crucial advantage: the secrets of the Enigma machine. By cracking German codes, they gained unprecedented insight into Tirpitz's movements, a vulnerability unknown to the Germans. This intelligence allowed the Allies to monitor the battleship's activities closely and prepare for any potential engagement. As 1942 unfolded, the Tirpitz roared into action on her first combat mission. But from that moment on, she would be pursued and hunted mercilessly. She was the greatest battleship in Europe and also the most prominent target. Despite early attempts to sabotage the Tirpitz, it was only after her menacing potential became undeniably clear that the full weight of Allied efforts bore down on the German battleship. The turning point came on July 6, 1942, in an incident that would underscore the urgent need to neutralize this formidable threat. The paint had barely dried on the Tirpitz when she lay in wait in the waters of northern Norway, poised alongside a fleet of German warships. Her objective was to ambush the Allied convoy PQ-17 en route to the Soviet Union, carrying vital supplies. Although the Tirpitz never engaged the convoy directly, her mere presence in the area cast a long shadow over the Allied forces. When the Allies learned that the fearsome battleship was nearby, panic ensued. In a bid to avoid the perceived threat, Allied command ordered the convoy to scatter, inadvertently turning the merchant vessels into isolated targets. This decision proved disastrous. German air and naval units quickly seized the opportunity, launching a merciless assault that resulted in the destruction of 24 Allied ships. The catastrophe of convoy PQ-17 was a grim testament to the Tirpitz's psychological impact, a single battleship capable of derailing an entire Allied operation. The carnage of PQ-17 served as a stark reminder of the urgency to neutralize the Tirpitz. However, previous RAF aerial bombardments had proven fruitless. It was becoming clear that new tactics were required to deal with the battleship. The Admiralty began to theorize that the key to success might lie in executing a covert, close-quarters assault against the anchored ship. Thus, Operation Tidal was conceived. An audacious and unprecedented plan, the mission aimed to use two-man human torpedoes, referred to as chariots, to stealthily approach the Tirpitz and attach explosive charges to her hull. On the night of October 31, 1942, 6 of Britain's finest commandos prepared for what could be a one-way mission. Under the cover of darkness, a submarine silently approached the Norwegian coastline, successfully evading German patrols. The commandos and their chariots were deployed into the icy waters, beginning their perilous journey toward the Tirpitz. Navigating through the pitch-black sea, they were determined to deliver their payload and strike a crippling blow against the German naval threat. However, the unforgiving North Sea had its own plans. Powerful undercurrents clashed with the chariots, throwing them off course. 2 of the chariots were lost to the ocean's relentless grip, forcing their operators to retreat. The remaining commandos pressed on, battling the elements with determination. But as the sea continued to rage, it became increasingly clear that fastening the explosives to the Tirpitz would be impossible. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the grim reality set in. The mission had failed. Exhausted and disheartened, the surviving commandos abandoned their chariots and made the arduous swim back to their waiting submarine. Despite their valiant efforts, the Tirpitz remained untouched, her threat to the Allies looming larger than ever. In the aftermath of Operation Tidal's failure, British commando leadership remained resolute. They were convinced that the collapse of the mission wasn't due to a flaw in strategy, but rather uncontrollable external factors. The belief persisted that a covert operation was the only viable means to bring down the colossal battleship. September 1943 marked the beginning of Operation Source, a renewed and bold attempt to incapacitate the Tierpitz through a daring commando operation. This time, the British would employ 6 X-class midget submarines, each armed with explosive side cargoes designed to cripple the iconic Battleship and other key German vessels positioned in Norwegian waters. Of the original 6 submarines deployed, only 3 reached their intended targets. Among those that succeeded were X6 and X7, whose crews would etch their names into the annals of history. These infiltrators managed to evade detection and plant their explosives directly on the outer hull of the Tirpitz. The subsequent detonation tore through the battleship's underbelly, causing catastrophic damage. Fuel tanks ruptured, bulkheads buckled, and thousands of tons of water flooded into the vessel. The explosion's impact was devastating. Generators were rendered inoperative, the formidable turret door was knocked off its bearings, and the ship's reconnaissance float planes lay in ruins. The operation had been a remarkable success. The German super battleship was severely crippled, though not entirely destroyed. This significant damage meant the Tirpitz would be out of commission for several months, providing a crucial window for Allied naval operations. However, the victory came at a steep price. The fate of X5 remains shrouded in mystery, while X6, after executing its mission, was forced to surface, leading to the capture of its crew. The same fate befell the crew of X7. Despite the heavy toll, the operation had shattered the Tirpitz's aura of invincibility, setting the stage for even more daring and explosive operations aimed at removing the battleship from existence altogether. With the Tirpitz crippled, the Allies knew that their fight was far from over. The battleship's threat, although diminished, still lingered. In April 1944, with previous efforts to sink the Tirpitz weighing heavily on their minds, the Allies decided to pivot their tactics with a bold new plan: Operation Tungsten. After failing to bring down the battleship from below the waves, they turned their focus to striking from above, harnessing the power of air superiority to unleash a devastating assault. Launching from the decks of fleet carriers, waves of aircraft took to the skies with a singular purpose: to lay waste to the Tirpitz, stationed in the biting cold of Fjords, Norway. The raid was chaotic and intense, marked by the cacophony of explosions and the thunder of anti-aircraft fire. Yet despite the ferocity of the attack, it fell short of being decisive. Though marred and wounded, the Tirpitz refused to succumb. Her superstructure bore the unmistakable marks of the brutal assault, yet she stood defiant. The months that followed saw the Allies persist with unwavering determination, unwilling to let their nemesis remain a threat. Operation Tungsten was just the beginning of a relentless campaign to render the battleship powerless. Operation Mascot swiftly followed, succeeded by the relentless hammer blows of the Goodwood operations. The directive was clear: if the Tirpitz could not be destroyed outright, it was to be cornered and rendered useless to the German war effort. Yet the Germans were equally determined, fortifying their naval behemoth with every conceivable defense. The Germans transformed the surrounding waters into a fortress, utilizing deceptive smokescreens, ceaseless barrages of anti-aircraft fire, and the treacherous terrain of the Norwegian fjords. Their efforts created a formidable barrier that was not easily breached. Despite this, the RAF launched repeated assaults, landing dozens of devastating hits, but failing to deliver the fatal blow. Time and again, the RAF returned, determined to pierce the Tirpitz's defenses. Yet despite the skill and bravery of the pilots, the ordnance deployed seemed to lack the sheer power needed to penetrate the naval titan's armor. With each raid, the Allies grew more aware that they needed something more, a weapon capable of breaching the battleship's formidable defenses. September 1944 brought a new hope in the form of a powerful weapon, the Tallboy bomb, a terrifying masterpiece conceived by the brilliant engineer Barnes Wallis. This monstrous 12,000-pound device was no ordinary explosive. It was a breakthrough in warfare design, engineered to deliver deep penetration and unparalleled destructive force. On September 15, 1944, 23 Lancaster bombers, each armed with Tallboys, took to the skies. As the Lancasters reached the Norwegian skies, they faced daunting defenses and unforgiving weather. Yet amidst the chaos, one Tallboy achieved its deadly purpose. It drilled deep into the Tirpitz, detonating beneath her hull and unleashing a hellish maelstrom from within. The explosion sent shockwaves through the battleship, causing catastrophic structural damage. The aftermath was utter chaos. As her crew fought desperately to keep her afloat, the massive battleship was left severely damaged, her speed and maneuverability crippled. The German efforts to save their prized warship were desperate and coordinated, racing against time to stave off disaster. Almost a month of intensive on-site repairs was required to make the vessel seaworthy once more, allowing her to make the perilous journey south to Tromsø for further repairs. The beast, though crushed and agonizing, was not yet dead. Despite the significant damage, the Allies had learned a crucial lesson. It would be an air attack that would ultimately seal the Tirpitz's fate. The success of the Tallboy bombs demonstrated their devastating potential. Given favorable weather and precision strikes, they possessed the sheer power to obliterate the German capital ship. Nestled deep within Tromsø fjords' protective embrace, the Germans harbored hopes of keeping the Tierpitz far from RAF surveillance, buying precious time to restore her to her former glory. Yet the Allies were far from deterred. Armed with the decrypted secrets of the Enigma code, they tracked the battleship's every move, ready to strike at the opportune moment. Now, with motive, means, and knowledge on their side, the stage was set for the endgame against the Tirpitz. The Allies were resolved to bring this saga to a decisive conclusion, and the looming confrontation promised to be a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and the relentless pursuit of victory. The time had come to put an end to the Tirpitz's reign of terror, once and for all. November 12, 1944, the dawn of a pivotal day in the annals of naval warfare. As the sun rose over the Norwegian fjords, Operation Catechism was set in motion, a final, audacious bid to end the saga of the Tirpitz. 30 Lancasters, under the leadership of Wing Commanders J.B. Willey and L.A. Williams, took off from Scotland, their mission clear and resolute, to sink the pride of the Kriegsmarine once and for all. Maneuvering with unmatched precision, the Lancasters evaded radar detection, their engines humming ominously as they approached their target. The Tirpitz, the beast they had hunted for so long, lay nestled within the fjords of Tromsø, unaware of the storm about to descend upon her. The initial moments of the assault were marked by breathtaking speed and surprise. In a rapid, heart-stopping plunge, the bombers swooped down upon the unsuspecting battleship. Below deck, Kriegsmarine sailors scrambled, their frantic calls for air support echoing through the corridors. But luck was not on their side. There was no response from Bardufoss's Luftwaffe base, and no German pilots would take to the skies that day. Despite her wounds, the Tirpitz was far from defenseless. As the Lancasters bore down, the battleship's anti-aircraft cannons roared to life, joined by land-based artillery in a fierce attempt to fend off the aerial onslaught. Flak lit up the horizon, a deadly dance of tracer rounds and explosions, as the raid reached its fever pitch. At 09:35 a.m., in a final act of defiance, Tirpitz turned her massive 15-inch guns skyward, targeting the Lancasters in a desperate bid to scatter their assault. The air was thick with chaos and destruction, yet the bombers pressed on, their resolve unshaken. The moment of reckoning had arrived. 32 Lancasters from the elite No. 9 and 617 squadrons unleashed a tempest of 29 Tallboys, the Allies' most potent weapon in the quest to vanquish the Tirpitz. Amidst the firestorm, 2 bombs found their mark, and another fell dangerously close. The waters churned violently as the deafening detonations tore through the air. Bombs rained down around the pride of the Kriegsmarine, embedding themselves in the seabed and obliterating the sandbank that acted as her protective cradle against capsizing. One Tallboy slammed through the deck between turrets Anton and Bruno, but failed to detonate. Another hit amidships, carving out a gaping wound between the aircraft catapult and the funnel, obliterating the adjacent belt armor. As the ship reeled from the blows, a third bomb grazed the port side of turret Caesar, adding to the devastation. The Tirpitz was being torn apart, her once mighty form succumbing to the relentless barrage. Then a searing flash turned the skies white as a thick column of smoke rose over 100 meters above the ship. The ship's magazines had detonated in a catastrophic explosion. In the wake of the explosion, the once unsinkable battleship was broken, her power extinguished, and her spirit shattered. 10 minutes after the detonation, the Tirpitz leaned grotesquely at 60 degrees, her fate sealed. Men began to pour from her decks, diving into the icy waters, attempting to flee the doomed giant as she succumbed to the embrace of the fjord. The scene was brutal. Around 100 sailors, swimming desperately for the shore, were caught in the fiery blast of one of Tirpitz's turrets, a final tragic testament to the ship's once mighty firepower. From an original crew of 1,200 souls, only 82 survived the sinking, thanks to a last-minute rescue effort that saw men hacking through the hull to pull their comrades from a watery grave. The aftermath of the sinking left a bitter taste in German mouths, with fingers pointed directly at the Luftwaffe for their absence. The Kriegsmarine's pleas for air support had gone unanswered, and the blame fell squarely on Major Heinrich Erler of the 3rd Jagdgeschwader 5. Accused of neglecting his duty to protect the Tirpitz, Erler faced a trial in Oslo, overshadowed by whispers of execution. Ultimately, Erler received a 3-year sentence, though he was released after a mere month, demoted and reassigned to a Me-262 squadron back in Germany. Subsequent investigations would reveal a tragic lapse in communication between the Kriegsmarine and Luftwaffe, sealing Tirpitz's fate on that fateful November day. The skeletal remains of Tirpitz lingered in the waters of Tromsø for years after the war, until joint German-Norwegian recovery efforts rescued most of the wreckage between 1948 and 1957. Yet the legacy of the battleship Tirpitz extends far beyond its physical form. It offers a profound exploration into the intricacies of psychological warfare and strategic significance during World War II. To the Germans, Tirpitz was an emblem of unmatched naval prowess, a floating citadel that imperiled the Allies' maritime supremacy. In hindsight, while the ship engaged in limited direct combat, her looming presence in Norwegian waters compelled the British to reallocate vast resources, including ships, aircraft, and manpower, solely to keep her in check. This fleet-in-being strategy underscored how, even without active engagement, Tirpitz profoundly shaped British naval tactics. The physical might of the warship paled in comparison to its symbolic power. The mere thought of one of the world's most imposing warships under the Third Reich's command, poised to unleash havoc in the Atlantic, was strong enough to redefine the war's strategic landscape. The relentless attempts to neutralize Tirpitz, through bombing sorties, stealthy mini-submarines, or other daring methods, underscore the depth of British concern. The ship's threat as an idea was in many respects even more fearsome than its enormous 15-inch guns. The fateful sinking of Tirpitz in November 1944 did more than merely eliminate a looming threat. For the Germans, it was a crushing psychological blow, starkly revealing that not even their crowning naval jewel was beyond the reach of destruction. For the Allies, this monumental victory showcased their burgeoning aerial capabilities and the extraordinary measures they would undertake to neutralize pivotal threats.